So we'll move now to the panel discussion, and for the animation of this panel, I'm calling Marcin Detyniecki. Marcin is a computer scientist and researcher in artificial intelligence. He's a former scientist of University of Berkeley, Carnegie Mellon, and the CNRS. He's professor at the Polish Academy of Science and associate researcher at the Computer Science Laboratory of University Pierre and Marie Curie. He has more than 15 years of experience in fundamental and applied research in multimedia information retrieval, image understanding, and usage of new media, with many rewards in international competitions such as TrekVid. And he holds also more than 90 publications in journals, conferences, and including several keynotes. He recently joined AXA Data Innovation Lab as a senior R&D officer. So welcome, Marcin. And I also invite the speakers to join me at this table.
Yeah, I sit down here so that I can, maybe stop or somebody of you or animate the thing. So just before we start, I wanted to say some words how we're going to proceed. So we are going to go through some questions first, and so each of you can react. You can also, if you disagree, even a little, you can also like play rules so that we have a very, nice discussion. And if the topic is really interesting for you, you can also try to wave to me to jump in, even though I will try to have some time at the end for open questions to the panel, right? But since we have already had some questions individually, maybe so try to wave me and so on. Okay, so let's go to the topic. So as it was mentioned at the beginning, I work for 15 years at the academia, and I work in artificial intelligence, right? And so a lot of things I focus was on vision, trying to recognize things. And during this career, I discovered that there's something magic is the object, sensors and objects, because these allow us to better understand the people. These are allowed us to make more interaction with the humans, and this is a little bit what artificial intelligence is also about. And I see that in the industry and all this community and business, there is a lot on trying also to understand better the business. So I have come across a lot of questions during my career, and I would like to have a more business perspective. The first one is that there is a little contradiction, I would say, a complication between the fact that better understanding the people, it's also slowly getting into their privacy. I think it was already mentioned. And the better we understand these people, well, the more deeply we go into their privacy. So how do you think we can convince people, or should we regulate this, or what is the limit? What should we do about privacy and convincing people to share their data? Any volunteer?
Yeah, I can try to say something about that. There's, I think he's a US president who said every time you trade liberty for safety, you usually get neither. So, and sharing your data is about giving away some liberty, because that belongs to you, and that's something you give away. I think my view is this trend has started a long time ago, 10 years ago, when pretty much when Google started. And it's being used not only by Google, but Microsoft and Apple. And I don't know if you know that. Just to give you an example, you know that there is geolocation that is based on GPS. But even if GPS is not available, Google or anybody else can locate you. How do they do that? It's because they look at the Wi-Fi network. And the last time they saw the Wi-Fi network, they store the GPS information together with the Wi-Fi network. And if you only have the Wi-Fi network, they find you where you are. We use that technology in the sensor. So every time we put the sensor somewhere, it looks around for the Wi-Fi network, and we know exactly where it is without the GPS. So we cannot stop that. It's too strong. But I think what we can do is we can monetize that. We can give people a choice to say, I don't want to share my privacy, and that's fine. and I don't get any money, and I don't get any benefit because I have enough money to protect my privacy. But other people may have a different option and say, I'm prepared to give away my privacy if I get something for it. That's my view.
So I'm going to start with another says when just I don't know exactly remember the exact sentence, but when something is for free, it means you are the product. So that's basically the logic behind a lot of the free services of the internet. Is of course your data are the product being traded in the term of service of Gmail and any of the other free services. You give away the rights of Facebook or whatever. You give away some rights of your own privacy. My learning about this, because if you want to make sure a conference or any debate doesn't go through, you just ask the question about the privacy and it can lock the whole conference to this very question, because my understanding here, and based off a few years of experience, is the understanding of privacy varies very widely per culture. If you talk about privacy in China, in Japan, it doesn't matter whether it's a free country or not. It's just a matter of what is the age of the person that is being asked the question, what is their level of education and safety, etc. So the rules I've seen is everybody that has experienced World War II is completely against any lists of any kind, whether it's a German or the French. And so if you took anyone who was born before 1945, there is this incredible barrier that says, I don't want any more list of any kind. And it's something maybe the young generation should remember, because anyone below the age of 20 absolutely don't care at all about their privacy. So those are the two extremes of the how much do I value my own privacy. Then it's unclear, and so from one society to another, so the most extremists are the French and the German. The most open-minded are the Anglo-Saxon countries. But none of those countries feel they are not a free country or they are object to their privacy. So it's really interesting that it's going far deeper. It's really fundamental system of belief. So it's really a philosophical problem that is very hard to understand. The European way, or at least the continental Europe way of thinking about this, is you own your data, and unless you have given your agreement, nobody will do anything with your data. Based on the complexity of what has been discussed, the very fact that you have any idea of what your data are going to be used for is nearly impossible to understand unless you have a PhD in or 3 years of PhD. So now the very fact that you understand really what your data are going to be used for is kind of science fiction in most cases. And one of the biggest issues that is not solved right now in the current policy about privacy is the current European regulation. You need to have an explicit consent about the end usage of your data. But a lot of us are data scientists, which means that a lot of what we do is exploratory or research purposes. So I cannot ask the explicit consent of my user to say, I'm going to use your data to do this and this and this, because I have no clue. My whole job is actually to research what I can do with your data, and then to find a value to it, and then to find a business model to it, and then to come back to you and ask for your consent. So there is this issue right now in the way we do develop product, which comes from even the principe de précaution in the French constitution, that is not working and put us at risk in Europe versus other countries which are more, I would say, open-minded or more exploratory. So the balance needs to shift. The way we will have it shift is going probably be based on the biggest mistake that happens. So usually, as soon as someone, that's one of the interesting Facebook cases is there was this woman who was a marketing director at a big media company and put some images on Facebook without topless. and then she got fired the next day because she couldn't. So those mistakes will train the global audience. And so what I see is like the US are coming the European way, and Europe will have to somehow be a little more relaxed about the right to experiment before a stable business model is found. That's my view.
Maybe, Julien, you can say something, because it seems to me like this privacy issue is related, as you were saying, a little bit to who owns the data. And for me, sometimes it's not that clear who is the owner, because you have, so for example, you have a guy who has a gene, right? Specific gene, which is very interesting, actually. And with this, you can make a new medicine. Is it his gene? I mean, when you decode it, is it the company that decoded it? Is the company that created the medication? I mean, so maybe you can, you see that because it's very related to this privacy thing. Yeah. So maybe you can comment on that.
Yeah, the ownership of the data is defined legally. So it's depending of the contract. For example, in aerospace industry, in company like Snecma, Snecma buy some big machine to produce engine, aircraft engine, etc., and the data is not belonging to Snecma, it's belonging to the provider of the machine because it's defined in the contract. And Snecma, a company like Snecma are revoking each contract to introduce the ownership of the data produced by the machine. Because at the beginning, this data was used only for maintaining and maintenance aspect of the machine, and the user was the company, the producing company, not Snecma. And while Snecma want to optimize the engineering chain, they want the data and they want to be the owner of the data. So it's legal, it's a legal aspect, but the law is defined by the history and the historical configuration of the market. One other point about the privacy, in my opinion, we are confusing discrimination and privacy. So the privacy and the privacy law and the future European privacy law are defining a framework, a very strong framework about the data privacy, but the underlying concept is the discrimination. Is it normal to discriminate some people regarding insurance product, regarding power consumption, regarding etc.? And so we have clearly have a debate in the data science industry. Should we run data science study on individual or on micro clusters of individuals? So what is the limit between a groups of 10 persons and one individual? It's possible to price a claims for 10 people with a very close characteristic, behavior, etc. And it's not about data privacy. It's an anonymous group. So the problematic is probably about how to control and to progress in the construction of this micro segment and to run this study. And so we have a challenge between fight against discrimination, data privacy, service, and the value of data in using for emergency aspect, for GPS, etc. So it's really a challenge from my point of view.
I think the privacy topic is quite interesting. So what I want to say about that is, as we are entering in the Internet of Things, we are talking a lot of things which are generating data, and the things do not cannot own the data themselves. For example, the things or the objects or the animals. So I mentioned before the case of a cow, which is sending data. Is there a problem of privacy of the cow generated data? Is there privacy about the weather, the temperature in the top of the Tour Eiffel? So there are a lot of areas where the privacy is not an issue. And there is a lot of things which depends on the sector of the industry in which you are acting. So I think there are a lot of possibilities still without entering in the privacy issue.
Yeah, so it seems that what you're saying, that part of the answer is in the control. Like you were saying that the control, that you can say, okay, I'm getting something for free or something, is then I can decide. But so I have another question. It's also, it's a little bit privacy, but it goes a little bit more beyond that. Is that people like you, I mean, there is a blooming industry coming, and so you're going to have all these objects in the market, all these objects, and all these great ideas, and now you will have to be managing all your privacy, but also you will have to be managing all these objects too, right? And you will have to be like managing, you know, setting up this, setting up that. So there is not a limit in this industry because of that you were going to have thousands of objects in your house, or 50 appliances plus objects that you were, say, very low cost that we were talking about, and you'll be overwhelmed, not able to manage this. Do you think this is going to be a problem or not?
So I have a funny story. So right now, we have a company that makes Internet of Things devices hardware. So right now, we have received 10 RFP to make buttons. Because there is this big trend in the industry to have a button, just one single button to call Darty, to call Evian, to call, so to reorder, whatever. So every brand, usually, like 10 years ago, they had their website. 5 years ago, they had their mobile app. Now they want their button. So you can imagine what a house will look like with 25 buttons. It will look like a piano, and every brand that wants to be present in your house will need a button. So that is one thing that is really a coming trend. The idea of the button to make it simple was so smart that everybody wants a super smart way to call you. And so there is this, and on the other end, you have all those initiatives from Samsung, from Google, etc., that want to federate all those objects and come to one single point of contact. So my learning about this is like the number of usage that are accepted in a house are kind of limited, and they are shifting not so much and not so fast. So the best way to understand those users, the way I look at it, I've been looking at it as a researcher before, is to look at experience and environment. So what happens in the living room, what happens in your bedroom, what happens in your kitchen, what happens in your bathroom. So the number of things you're going to do in those places and the number of usage that you might benefit from connected object. I'm talking about like the real people life. There are other applications in B2B, but the number of things you will be doing in these things are not going to vary a lot. You will spend 15 minutes in your bathroom. You are not going to change the overall balance. So of course we are going to start having this kind of okay, with which device? Let's take the bathroom, which I know a little better. Which device am I going to weight me? So there are those scales that are being sold. So you will have a few choices of product that will still improving your experience, giving you more services, blah blah blah. But in the number of usage that you need to feed with new devices and new services are not going to expand, and the time allocated to those things are not going to change dramatically. Even TV has topped, etc. So what you see is you have your global trend to spend more time in front of the TV, and the TV is less and less seen in the living room. So you might have usage that goes beyond the traditional place it was to go to. But so my answer to this is like it's going to be Darwinian. It's like the customer is going to probably look for changes or accept very, very few new usage. And it will only be new improved services of existing usage that will find their place in a home and then find a reliable business model.
Maybe I can, I believe, so my personal belief is that I agree with the fact that customers cannot deal with many use cases at the same time, and there is no room for that. And one of the challenges in any consumer industry is to keep the customer using the device, especially in connected devices. what we could think about is the evolution of the button, like the dash button, where you use it, you have to press the button to inform Amazon that you are running out of coffee. Why not have a device, the coffee box, which automatically knows when it is empty and does the trick without the customer having to do anything? And this is where we can go beyond what the customer can accept, because the customer don't have to do anything. I think this is more the trend, but then to do that, we need to have a marginal cost of the sensor in the coffee pot, in the coffee package, has to be marginal compared to the price of the coffee, and this is a challenge.
Yeah. Yes. So what? One thing also that this lets me think, like what you were saying there, is that if you look, for example, at the two internet, your two first presentations, so Thomas and Philippe's, is that somehow it's interesting with the Internet of Objects to change the behavior of these people, right? So that's more or less the business plan, right? That we are going to let the people know how to do things better, and so on and so on. Don't you think that there is a risk that's going to be felt like a pressure that we're going to be robots? So we have to now drive this way, and we have to brush our tooth this way, and we have to do this way. If not, we have to pay more. Do you have any comment on that? What would you say to somebody who says that?
I think it's not just about paying more. I think the way, I think you're right in what you are saying. Most of the sensors are aimed at changing people's behavior. It's not necessarily for, let's say, economic purposes. It could be because you want to be friendly to the environment. I mean, you might not be happy to have coal being burned in a power plant, and you would rather use something like using green energy and solar panels, for instance. So it's not just money related. I think the big issue about changing behavior is I would say twofold. I think it's the first one that just explained. It takes forever. I mean, remember the last time you changed your fridge? I mean, if we were asking around, it was probably 15 years ago or 10 years ago, and you are not quite keen to change your fridge for a new one. So the probability that you have a smart fridge in the next 2 or 3 years is very, very low. So it takes a very long time to change behaviors. But more importantly, I think if nothing else, I think those sensors are aimed at making you aware of what you do right and what you do wrong. And it's up to you then. But at the moment, how do you know whether you are brushing your teeth the right way or the wrong way? Nothing is telling you. How do you know whether you are using your electricity in the right way or not? Nothing is telling you. So what we do, we make you aware of it. Now it's your take from then.
So there is two levels. One is giving you information, and then the question is, once you have this information, is it going to affect the way you behave or not? And there are two separated questions. Giving you the information, we are in a world where having more information seems to look like progress. Seems to look, because sometimes it's actually making you more distracted. You have attention disorder, which is the average American citizen attention has dropped by 80% over 15 years. So he used to be able to focus for 5 minutes, and now we are talking about 10 to 30 seconds of ability to really focus on one topic based on the YouTube short videos and stuff. So giving more data seems to be, in the current philosophy, better for the overall world. And we can agree, because the internet is all about sharing data all together. It seems that it's kind of the law of progress in our world. What do we do with those data, and how do we provide a real service to those data? How do we is a different question. And so the way we are positioning ourselves is we give you a new service, which is we will have your kids brush their teeth, versus you will have to fight to get your kids in the bathroom to pretend brushing their teeth. So the value proposition for the parents is not about altering behavior, is really like solving a daily problem. And nobody will complain about that. At least that's a key selling point. The question that has been asked later on is, if my kids brush their teeth using such a device, are we going to alter their behavior for the long run? And we are currently running studies to check whether if you are trained at the right age to use a device like this one, is it going to make you a better adult and have, on the long run, a better oral care? So one of the, I would say, macroeconomic way of looking at this, especially in health, is like the cost to GDP of oral healthcare system is 17 to 18% in US, 12 to 13% in France, 7 to 8% in Singapore. We cannot pretend that any of those countries are, we can pretend that some countries are a little better, but not dramatically from 1 to 2.5. So if we all agree that in the next 20, 30 years, we are going to get older, we are going to have issues regarding longer life expectancy, each society will have to find the best possible way with a certain amount of GDP allocated to this, like say 15% will be the maximum amount that any society can afford, with the same amount of money to have better behavior without altering privacy and without altering and making everybody like robots. The data we are starting to collect and the new sensors and the new sense we are enabling right now will be probably the ground to this revolution. And we need to be prepared because we will have to face these challenges. So I believe we are kind of the early stage of this requirement in the changing society we are living in.
I wanted actually, like, it seems that the response they're giving is that actually somehow the value is in the, it's not really data, but it's information, right? It's information. So this brings me to a more general question I wanted to ask you, Julien, is where since you are a specialist in this, where is the value? Is it the value, is it in the data? Is it in the algorithms that you put on top of it? Right? Or is it in the hardware, well, the sensors, let's say, the way you collect it? Well, there's also some value, of course, in the transport that we've seen before, or is it in the service? So yeah. What's your opinion in that?
My opinion and my perspective from Group DDME, of course, is not in the hardware. It's not in the network because it's a part of the cost. It's finally in the service, and the usage is defined by the service. If the cost is superior to the service value, the business case is not positive. It's negative. So the problematic is to building the value chain of the data. If you don't have the sensors, if you don't have the network, if you don't have the service, you have nothing. If you break one part of the chain, the service has no value because it can operate. So the question is how to provide at the efficient cost all the chain and to provide the right service to the right people at the right price. And it's joining the question about the privacy. Is it the free business model? Is always the model for the data or not? Because clearly the situation of the data is abused by the advertising market right now, especially about data privacy. So we have to be very careful about from my perspective, to not monetize each data to the advertising market, because the value of the data advertising market is highly decreasing, and the ethical perspective of this industry is decreasing right now. So we have to be careful to the usage of the service, to the value proposition of the service, and the channel of data monetization. This is my opinion.
Yeah, if I can say something like that, because we, for let's say venture capital, we had to value our business, and the way we value the business was based on the sum of the parts. So one part of the sum is just looking at the cash flows and the value of the cash flows, and the other part was the value of the data. So the way we value the data is, for me, the value is in the eye of the beholder. So who is interested in your data? In our case, because we sell electricity data, consumption data, the value is in the eye of the, let's say, utility company. If a utility company knows how you are using your electricity, let's assume that out of a bill of 1,500 euros a year, they make 1% more cash flow, okay, free cash flow. So it's about, we're talking about 15 euros. 15 euros, you take that for 7 years to have a sort of a rough value. So it gives you about 100 euros. So I think for my business only, that data, I mean, those data that we produce have a value of about 100 euros. So if you apply that to gas, water, the way you consume food and everything, I think it's at least, I would say, altogether, sharing our data is something that is worth 1,000 euros, I would say.
But I am a specialist in machine learning, right? So I'm surprised or disappointed, let's say, that it seems for you, and I wanted to have some explanations on that, why the value for you isn't data. If you imagine could do more with the same data set, right? You could be more accurate. For example, you estimate the prices based on a root curve, so it's based on accuracy, right? So if you could do better with the same thing, why you focus on the data and not on the algorithms? It's just to understand.
Okay, so in our case, the value is in our algorithm. Also, access to the data that lets you train. So right now, algorithms are public domain because this is science, right? So you go to a conference and you can you can learn so much, and the field of artificial intelligence is so intense. So what makes your algorithm works is to be tested on data sets. And so the rarity right now is actually relevant data sets. How do you define relevant data sets? Just experimenting versus reality. And so it's like an engine and oil. You can say the value is in the engine or the value is in the oil. The two needs to work together. Some people sell engines, some people sell oils, and this is a very virtuous ecosystem. And you have to improve your engine because you can sell better cars, and you have to improve the oil because it can be more energy efficient and do less consumption. So I feel this is just part of the same value chain. Why is this so important for industry players to have access to the data? Is like whatever algorithm or ideas you have, the most interesting data are either not captured or not publicly available. So we are all trying to know what is the best way to feed our engines. At least we sell the solution, not just the engine, not just the car.
I have just a comment. An algo produce a data. So where is the value? Is it in the output of the algo or the algo itself? And from my perspective, but obviously I'm trying to monetize data and not to monetize algo. And in our approach in real-time trading, and if we are trying to protect the exchange of the data, we use the output of the generated algo and the as data. So the value is the result of the algo. It's not the algo directly, but algo is kind of provider of data. And so as sensor, as us, we don't have to talk about our own production of data, but it's another subject.
You want to comment? No,
I don't know if I think the challenge in the IoT field, what I see, what we see as SIGFOX is not too much. Is to have a business model which you can boot, because you need to invest in data collection. You need to have objects in the field to generate data, which cost a lot, which need to bring a value before the data exists, and before you can make money out of the data, you need to fund the whole thing. So I think the challenge is probably the data will be on top of the value. It's difficult to boot the business on data only. I think this is the way we view it.
Okay, so if I put it very simply, somehow you're saying, because as a data scientist also kind of worried that all the value is in the data, right? but so if I put it simply, you were saying that somehow you need some data to start doing these algorithms, and then the output will have the value, right? So this is maybe a simplified version. So I was wondering, people like you, serial entrepreneurs and so on, that how do you start? Like, how do you start, like, to have some data? You need, when you start your new business, or you start, I don't know, new application with meters. You don't have thousands of machines. You don't have thousands of clients. How do you start? How do you start having first the data itself, of course, but which is most important for all these algorithms is the correct, I mean, the thing saying, yes, this data was this thing, or this was correct, not correct, and this you were putting the tooth in this place, and you were doing this and that. How do you do this?
So we do host a lot of startups. So they all start with a great idea, a crazy entrepreneur, which meaning that if he was doing computation right, he will never start the venture. So the way we start is really with a dream, an idea, a service that matters for you or for your relative or people. And so if you have a good idea, then usually you have people that are crazy enough to give you money to live your dream or try to prove that you are right or wrong. So that's, you start just by pitching, and so everything starts usually with slides. The same way so then the question is, how do you get your first relevant data set, and how do you make it right? So it's a completely experimental science. Nobody could ever say they started with the idea, got it right, got all the data right, etc. A lot of startups, let's take Criteo, which is one of the most successful, they pivoted 7 times before knowing exactly how to fine-tune their model so that it really works and scale. So it's a highly experimental science that is mostly driven by the passion of the overall idea of the service you want to bring. And then every iteration is usually you break everything and you do it again in a different way based on your know-how and experience. So the second level is resilience. So you still want to solve your problems. This is very close from your life in academia. You want to tackle this issue and you are taking every possible aspect to do it. Then once you have this iteration, how do you get data sets? And so one way to get good data sets is to have a product at scale. So we do have a company that has 1 million users because they provide radio to any kind of phone. So they have 1 million people that want to listen to radio. And so you have a good data set because you provide a service. The value is not at the data at the moment. It's just like you provide a good service and people trade free things against their data, and the data set is useful. The other way is to do a partnership with people like AXA, and you say, I'm going to do something you cannot do faster, quicker, more efficiently, and we can share the result together. That's how we started another company here. That's another way of doing it. The third way is a little more costly, is that what my colleagues are going to talk to you about, is like, we have a great technology, it can collect a lot of data, let's bring an infrastructure or service that will be, and so that's what my colleagues are doing, which is more costly. But they are already probably well funded to be able to achieve this. So I'm not going to cover the other ways to start.
Yeah. How you build such a big infrastructure, for example?
So well, it started with a crazy technology. And with the promise that we will be able to do something which are impossible to do. At a cost point which is making IoT a reality, whereas machine to machine up to now has been not so successful in terms of deployment. So we managed to convince with slides and demonstrators initial investors to do it, as you mentioned, and after a while you need to start deploying and making things a reality. What is true is that today the SIGFOX is funded not on the promise of data, but is funded on a more traditional business model because the IoT is too new. So today VCs know how to fund, how to estimate the value of Criteo or companies like that based on the experience. For IoT, it is too new; they don't know. So they have to look at, in the case of SIGFOX, to things which are very simple and easy to understand, which is subscription. So this is the business model.
Philippe?
Yeah, I think I agree that you start with an idea, and usually when you start, you have no clue how to do it, and you have no clue how you're going to make money out of it. And the process is extremely iterative, where as you get further down and better understanding of what you can extract from your idea, you also need to refine how you can create a proposition for somebody to monetize it. So it's a balance between how much I can extract from my idea and how much can I deliver as value to my customers. And that process goes and goes and goes and goes and goes.
So you're saying, maybe I understand correctly, is the same process for the idea as for the data?
Yeah. First thing you say, well, that's great. I have the power consumption. I can sell that to somebody. And the guy say, yeah, I know, but my meter does the same thing. Okay. In real time, I can do that with a smart meter. Okay. Yeah, but mine is reliable. In England, for instance, the real time can only the data can only be collected. The reading from the smart meter can only be collected at day+1. What use is that to know that yesterday you were using a lot of energy? It's like, who cares? So then you have a bit of value, and as you develop this discussion with the customer, you understand how you want to develop your data and how much you want to aggregate all together to create a more compelling proposition for your customers. To me, I think that the lady this morning made a presentation about the scarcity of let's say the scientist skills. Made a point very clear. She said we need people with a very good scientific background, together with a very good business understanding. Data is nothing without monetization model, and I think that's what we have done. I don't know for other people, but that's what we have done, and we keep on doing that.
Okay. So since you want to add something?
I think we talked the data is nothing, and so the value of data, which is a fascinating presentation that was made by Julien, is like when we try right now we have this kind of crazy gold rush kind of thing where data is all the value and all the rest doesn't count, etc. But like data are like raw oil, like it's not gas, and all the value chain to turn raw oil into gas, and the ecosystem of cars and delivery and is exactly what's being built right now. So it's actually quite difficult to just understand in which industry we are going to be in a few years, because everything is going to be connected. Everything is going to collect a lot of data. Data are going to be commoditized, and where the value will stand is unknown to any of us. We are just playing and have a ticket to play at the lottery. It's still like the jury is still out, and there's more things to be discovered than already exists. Just a lesson of modesty on our side, or at least on my side.
So from what you are saying, let's say some institution like in which we are is a little bit like Saudi Arabia, right, with a lot of things. So I have a question then in that sense. It's like, how would you imagine collaboration with large groups in terms of what are the specific, let's say, difficulties in collaborating with the large group? And you can think a number of things, like I just say, well, you could think about data, how you want to share data. I mean, you have a solution but you could think about how you want to share data, or what are for you, let's say the big pain points or the main difficulties in collaborating with the large group. So maybe people in the audience can maybe help also.
The first point is probably time. The perception of time for a startup and for a large group is very, very different, because for a startup, time means cash, and the cash is a very limited resource. And so, and the process of decision for a large group is take the time. And so the time, the gap, for me, the gap of perspective for the time is probably the main problem working with large groups. The second one is for our business is a security officer, because we run every week a new security audit from our customer, because they want to be sure that we don't steal the data, etc., etc. So we are very professional about the security right now because we survived to three security audit from major financial institutions. It's a great challenge and a great adventure about security perspective.
Yes, I think for us well, it depends. Now we are not so small as we used to be. So I think we have more we have a better relationship with large companies. But I think the main topic is speed, of course, yes, and the speed of decision, and I think this is the main issue.
So we have. I've studied this topic for 10 years, so I have plenty of academic answer to your question, but a few practical ones that goes, speed is like the end result, but what is usually the issue from a startup perspective is basically we trade flexibility and speed. That's basically what the startup provide against, and that's how we collaborate. You give me your data, I'm going to give you a faster, quicker answer in less time that you actually will need to actually make a decision. So what happens usually are NIH, not invented here. So in a large group, there is always someone that already has done what you propose. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. There is a 6 people meeting, and then you're pitching what you're doing, and there's always someone that says, I've done this. And then there's another, and then the meeting is delayed because you need to actually check, have you already done it? And the people that will be in the next meeting will not be in the first meeting, so they will still be on the impression that it's already been done. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. The second thing is single point of contact, is who is making the decision. In the startup, the CEO sits in the room, we shake hands, it's done. Basically, it's actually everything in a large group is preventing you from doing that. And it's just because you need to finance stuff, especially when you are disruptive, it's not in the planning, it's not in the budget. So you need to have some freedom of doing unexpected things because the cycle of a new product for a startup is every month or every day for some applications, while the budget cycle is actually a yearly process that is kind of painful and needs to be planned. If you actually agree to sign with the legal part of it, it's like the brand is so valuable. Let's take a beautiful brand like AXA. It's like you want to be prevented from any risk. And whatever a startup is doing is risky, otherwise you will already do it. So there is always this level of risk agreement or risk-taking agreement that will never completely satisfy the lawyer, and they will never make the position of the startup completely safe. So this is kind of where great leaders in large organizations make a difference. Is like you take a risk with a startup because there is no more risky business than helping a startup. And then from the other end of the startup, payment is like being paid is critical because time is money. And if you work with large institutional group or like states, it's even worse. Being paid is a cycle of 6 months where you actually have to beg to be paid 3 or 4 months after the due date of... and France is probably in the list of the top worst country in Europe versus Germany and others. So actually selling to a large French entity, especially if it's publicly owned, are usually the longest sales cycle and the worst paid customers. And that's actually a big issue for French startups because some countries don't understand why it's so hard to sell in France and you are from France and you have not proven your technology in France. So a lot of our companies is in the UK. We start with exporting because our home market is actually not really ready for startups. And there is a few exceptions. We were able to sign something with the Data Innovation Lab before it exists. But those things are actually global ecosystem problem.
Philippe, you're the last one for this one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I believe in PLU, people like us. I believe that it's easier to deal with a company that is a little bit like yours and that looks like yours, that has the same size, the same sort of short-term commitment. And as you grow, hopefully you can get to the next level up and then deal with somebody else. I would say it's very easy for a big company to crash and kill a startup in no time at all. They just have to send an order and never paid for the order or something like that. And actually, what kills companies' growth is not lack of business. As soon as you have an order, let's say, you know, if we're lucky enough, we sign an order with AXA for 1 million customers. It's very tricky to manage because I need to start the production for 1 million of these bloody things. I need to scale up the system for 1 million. It can kill me anytime. And it's a risk that they would probably assess, and that's a risk I will have to assess as well. I'm much more comfortable signing 100 and 1,000 and maybe 2,000, and that's my point. I think time is a big thing that they say as well, but I would say growth. You know, we in a very cozy relationship with a large company is extremely dangerous.
Just comment on this last one. A startup doing business with another startup is not also a good idea because you multiply the risk. And so if you multiply two numbers which are less than 1, the result is even smaller.
Yes, for sure. And when again a comment, I try right now that on the French market that large company are more open than in the past, and it's a bit difficult to work with large small company. You know, company around 5,000 of people. It's not a huge company, but it's like a huge company in terms of decision process, etc., etc. And I find it's more easy to work with a large global company like AXA, of course, or another one. But the open innovation concept is probably a good accelerator in the relationship between the large company and startup. So.